Hi, I am Ms. Raquel D. Cantos, student of Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology from Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Today, I am happy to share some information and discuss more about the philosophical foundations of psychology. Before we begin, we know that there are a lot of misconceptions about psychology. I will show you the most two common myths. First, misconception is psychologists can read minds. This is wrong because psychology is the study of the mind and how people interact in society. No psychologist will ever claim that they can read their mind. The second misconception is psychology is not a science. In contradiction, psychologists use both qualitative research methods, such as interviews and focus group. It also uses a quantitative research methods such as questionnaires and surveys to understand various behavioral and cognitive processes. Let's move forward to our main objective. In this video, we will cover the following topics. First, to compare what psychology is before and at present, to discuss the different concepts in psychology from three philosophers, namely Heraclitus, Hippocrates, and Plato, to illustrate changes in abnormal psychology and clinical psychology concept, to apply the concept of Filipino psychology or Psikolohiyang Pilipino, and lastly, to present sample applications in my psychology practice. It has been said that early psychology focused on measuring and understanding the mind, while later psychology focused on measuring and understanding behavior. We have three philosophers which contributed much to psychology. First philosopher is Heraclitus. According to Heraclitus, all people possess logos, or the ability to reason, but some people do not make use of it. It relates to theory of mind, which is an important social cognitive skill, or the ability to think about mental states, both your own and those of others. By being able to think about what other people are thinking, we can better understand others and predict what they might do next. The second concept of Heraclitus is man is not a static being. Every stage of our development does not make us a distinct person. We simply make progress. According to Rollo May's notion of existential psychology, when we applied it in psychotherapy and counseling, we have a free will, or the ability to make our own decisions and modify our behavior. I believe that personal evolution is necessary because things constantly change, and life was always evolving. Second philosopher is Hippocrates from 460 BC. He rejected the superstition of the priest and founded a medical school. He is considered the father of medicine. He thought that all disease results from natural causes and must be treated by natural methods. He recommended the holistic treatments. In addition, he often prescribed rest, exercise, diet, music, and association with friends to restore natural balance. The imbalances of the humors were used to describe personality traits. Accordingly, too much of yellow bile, a person becomes easily angered or choleric. A person with too much black bile, a person becomes irritated, melancholic, or depressed. Too much of phlegm, a person becomes apathetic or lack interest, and too much of blood, it becomes cheerful, happy, and optimistic. Thus, a good humor is a balance of these humors. Third philosopher is Plato. Plato is one of the most prominent figures in ancient psychology. He believed that there are three aspects of psyche which are similar to Freud's theory. First is the reason or the rational part, which is equivalent to superego. It incorporates the values and morals of society, which are learned from one's parents and others. Second is the feeling part, which is equivalent to ego, and it satisfies our desires in realistic and socially appropriate ways. The third is the appetite, or the desire part, which is equivalent to id, a part of the unconscious that contains all the urges and impulses to satisfy our pleasure. A healthy psyche would have all three parts in balance. In our life, maintaining a balanced life is more important for our health and well-being, especially in a fast-paced modern world. Sustaining a balanced diet, personal fitness, and positive relationship with others, and stress management can help improve and stabilize overall health and well-being. One of the prominent psychologists in the 19th century is Wilhelm Wundt. He is a German professor who founded the first experimental psychology in 1879. It was then the official start of the separation of psychology from philosophy. He began using scientific method in laboratory to study the mind, thereby setting the stage for future psychologists. Today's psychology is said to be functionalistic because of its emphasis on learning, intelligence, testing, perception, and other functional processes. Let's move forward with abnormal psychology in the past. It was believed that people with psychological disorders, or those exhibiting strange behavior, were possessed by demons. These people were forced to take part in exorcisms, were imprisoned or executed. Later, asylums were built to house the mentally ill, but the patients received little to no treatment, and many of the methods used were cruel. In the mid-1960s, the deinstitutionalization movement gained support, and asylums were closed, enabling people with mental illness to return home and receive treatment in their own communities. Moving on is the concept of abnormal psychology in the Philippine context, or Psikologiyang Pilipino. The beliefs in supernatural beings are widespread in the Philippines. Specifically, na maligno or sapi is a Filipino belief that a mental illness is caused by an intervention of a supernatural or mystical being. The role of the traditional folk healer as part of the informal health sector is a common practice in rural areas. As a result, they influence the concept of mental illness causation in the decision-making of the patient. It may lead to a situation in which a patient's condition may worsen due to the delay of clinical diagnosis and pursuance of the recommended clinical management. The Filipino psychopathology was developed then and considered as the study of abnormal psychology in Filipino context. Several mental disorders have been identified that culture-bound syndromes can be found only in the Philippines or in other societies in which Filipino share cultural connections. Example is bangungot, where a person suddenly loses control of the respiration and digestion and falls into a coma and ultimately to death. When Filipino psychology is applied in counseling, Bulatao in 1978 made the following observations regarding counseling in the Philippines. Accordingly, Filipinos are more open to be themselves when in a sympathetic group of friends than in a one-on-one situation. In order to acquire a good quality data in counseling and in assessing the client, the pakikipagpalagayan ng loob, which refers to level of mutual trust, understanding, and rapport, should be reached in minimum. If I relate it to my profession, as a clinical practitioner, I always see to it that when I facilitate the process of diagnosis and treatment of mental disorders, I do it in a holistic approach. I consider the physical, mental, emotional, and behavioral aspects. It is necessary to rule out other medical conditions and take a look at different factors, such as stressors, family, and cultural background of the client. At present, clinical psychology or the management of mental illness has improved a lot compared to the past. There are psychiatric hospitals run by state governments and local community hospitals. A person suffering from symptoms could speak with a primary care physician who most likely would refer to someone who specializes in therapy. The person can receive outpatient mental health services from psychologists, psychiatrists, and even other counselors. Regarding the application, I would like to highlight the importance of multicultural counseling in handling clients. I always take into consideration the client's cultural background when doing an assessment and diagnosis. This is to avoid harm to clients and prevent the violation of code of ethics. Moreover, the client should be informed of their mental health condition. I also reminded that as mental health professionals, we should never contradict the client's beliefs. I listen to the narrative of the clients and provide psychological support and understanding as they need it. These are my references. Thank you and good day.